Hello everyone, and welcome to the satsang of Sahajananda tonight. The satsang will start in 5 minutes with Sahajananda. But before that, I would love to give you a little introduction about the satsang itself, and also about the activities of the Hridaya school in the next month, because many of us have been in the unknown, confined, and we are wondering when we can open again, and now we have a little bit more clarity. So let me introduce that. For those that don't know me, my name is Arnaud, and I am involved in the school in France. I am the president of the association there, the Hridaya association there, and one of the teacher and of the Karma Yogi of the center. So, as I said, Sahaja is coming in 5 minutes. The satsang will start in 5 minutes, and we'll follow this schedule. We'll start at 8 o'clock, 8 to 8:45. And then from 8:45 to 9 o'clock, there will be a time for question and answer. From 9 o'clock to 9:45, the formal satsang will continue. And then the last 15 minutes, from 9:45 to 10 o'clock, it will be another time for question and answer. And then at the end, Sahaja will ask the participants to put their video to have a visual communion of the community. Okay. And before we start with the satsang, I will also would like to speak about what Hridaya is offering in terms of online courses. And so in France, we will start with the 3 days retreat online in French and in English from the 19th to the 21st of June. So if you want to connect with us, experience a retreat online, there will be only 3 days this time. It will be in French with me, and in English, of course, with our dear Sahajananda. And you find all the information on our website, and you can register on the website. For Mazunte, they will also follow something similar, because they are offering 3 days retreat from the 19th to the 21st of June, and also an English 10 days retreat. So if you want to follow a 10 days retreat, if you have the time, if you are still confined, you can do the 10 days retreat there. It will be from June 19 to June 28. And then simultaneously, there will be a retreat 3 days and 10 days retreat in Spanish. So that will start also from 19th of June to the 28th of June. Then we also have the idea of like reopening the school. They have a bit more clarity. We are still waiting for to have more clarity from the local authorities. You know, things can change from one day to another. But for the moment, we are planning to reopen the school on the 27th of June. We're going to start with what we would call a discovery weekend, which is a weekend of discovery of yoga and meditation in French from the 27th to the 28th of June. That would be the weekend. And then we will start from the 28th of June to the July 17. We will start with the module 1. Some of you that wants to have an in-depth discovery of yoga, of the yoga tradition, and how to join yoga and meditation, then we'll start then. And for the first time, we will also offer this whole cycle of module 1 in French. So this could be, if you know anyone that wants to do that in French, that would be the opportunity. So I repeat, from June 28th to the 17th of July. And finally, in Mazunte, the school is also reopening at the beginning of July with the Spanish module 1 from July 1st to July 22, and the English module 2 and English module 3 on the 1st of July to the 22nd of July. There will also be a 3 days Spanish retreat a bit later from 31st of July to August 2nd. So let me summarize once more. We are planning to reopen the center in France in the Château de Longeval on the 27th of June, and Mazunte will reopen on the 1st of July. So these are all good news. Thank you for your attention, and thank you also to support the school in those moments, you know, to make this reopening a success. So enjoy the satsang of Sahajananda. Thank you so much for your attention, and please, Sahajananda.
Namaste. Welcome to the satsang. Let's start with a short moment of centeredness in the heart. Please close your eyes. We bring the awareness in the middle of the chest, a little to the right, one finger width to the right. The feeling of intimacy, the joy of reconnecting with the depth of our being. Asking, who am I? We are going deeper and deeper into this self-awareness. Beyond thoughts, memories, images, emotions. Keeping the awareness of the heart we gently open the eyes, keeping this echo. Me here now. What a miracle. We will continue our journey into self-awareness. And because I recently had some discussions with a team in France, I realized that we need to make in a more clear way what we are exploring here. So all these satsangs are about this inner nonviolent revolution, and we can see these satsangs as a free online course on self-awareness. You see, it's quite easy to access the heart in meditation, but then I could see also in spiritual communities, in these sanghas, in ashrams, people still are discussing with no focus, gossiping, still a lot of lack of attention. And all these satsangs are for creating this clarity and learning how to use our attention, mindfulness, in order to open us to the same reality of the self during not only meditations, but during any activity of the day. So this is the purpose of all this online course, how to become more aware, how to become self-aware in all activities of our life, everywhere. And I remind you what I said initially, that there is nothing critical, there is nothing urgent except this self-awareness. Why? Because it's a way of waking up, of pointing to that essence of our being. During this satsang, the sixth one, we will have as topics psychological flexibility and spiritual centeredness, diminishing this swing between yes and no as oppositions in our life, in our tendencies. We will discuss about what happens when we blindly follow our thoughts, emotions, and reactions. And I hope we'll have time also to speak about taking the opposite viewpoint deliberately, which I hope you guess what is about, to not stay just in our old perspective, but to assume the opposite perspective as well. Before going further, I will make a little recapitulation. We need this because we had also some practices last week, and I'm curious to know if you tried them. First, we spoke about this importance of purifying somehow the perception. So in any act of perception, try to look for a spontaneous, conscious, natural liberation of that perception from the personal perceiver, experiencer. That means that me with my thoughts, projections, reactions, filters. And this again can happen when we ask the question, who am I? It's like a remembrance, a wonderment. And you remember we spoke about that teachings of the fish, a fish that just appears, jump out of the water and then falls back. And that moment of wonderment beyond thoughts, beyond a need to follow or to do something, that excitement, that unforgettable moment, still so powerful and still so nicely dissolved into the present moment, into that nothingness of the stillness of being, is pointing exactly as the sound of the gong dissolving into stillness is pointing to that same wonderment of being. So we are speaking now about an art of perception pointing to the infinite eternal me that embraces the objects perceived and the perception as well in a wholeness. So we can say everything points to God, but not God as an image or as, I don't know what religious perspective, but this stillness, sacredness, fascination of being. And we also discussed about this nironda parinama in perception, so the transformation of dissolution, as Patanjali expressed it, a phenomenon in which the subconscious mind can slowly purify it in meditation. The same can be experienced in a perception. So I look around, I see a flower, and then without this reaction, it's just the presence. Again, it can be an excitement, but that excitement dissolves into that presence, into that sacred tremor of the heart. And that is a transformation of dissolution. The perception dissolves exactly as the sound of the gong dissolves into stillness. The perception with all its nuances dissolves into the same reality of the heart. This is another way of expressing the same fascinating power of the still center. It is fascinating and has the power to dissolve the subconscious mind with all our fears, problems, and our perceptions. Everything dissolves there. Then last time we also spoke about the general guidelines of self-awareness in different practices. And we mentioned this kind of paradoxical fact that while only a small amount of effort is needed for be mindful, for be attentive of what is happening there, still remembering to make that effort can be very challenging. So we remember we forget to remember. We need to remember. And why so? Because of these habits, these conditionings of the ego. And I mentioned about these 3 levels of practice is the mechanicity, the mechanical, the mechanics, the actual procedure. For example, taking a deep breath as a pointer to increase the awareness, or just be aware of the breath, or passing a threshold, or sitting on a chair, walking through a doorway. All these can be actions, but this is the first level. The second level is the attention or the actual awareness of such gesture. So to be present in that moment, but this is still a self-observation, so an observation still at the personal level. So I am very conscious now that I'm taking this step, that I'm taking this breath. You are conscious of that gesture, of that act. This would be the mindfulness the Buddhist tradition is speaking about. But then the third level, which is the most important, is that self-awareness, that pure presence it points to. Yes? Because it's not just about being aware of your breath. It's more than this. It's about being aware of yourself. And I hope you practice that threshold crossing exercise. So being mindful whenever you approach a doorway, control your pace so that the first step across the threshold should be with the foot near the hinge, the foot nearest the hinge on the door. So please practice this because it's essential. And if I will be very happy if you have some questions or if you share about this. How was this for you? How this happened? Also, regarding the breath awareness. Now, with these times, we have a very good opportunity, actually, using the mask, using the mask which is imposed now whenever you enter in a shop or so. Using the mask, you can become even more aware of the breathing, especially that warmth of exhalation. And you don't go in reactivity, oh, I don't like this, or it's suffocating or whatever. You just observe. Exhale that warmth. You start even counting the breath. This would be a very good practice for this mindfulness, the second stage, the mindfulness. No? You start counting the breath. You are going in the shop, do different things. Exhalation, inhalation, exhalation 1. Inhalation, exhalation 2 till 7. Then from 1 till 14. Then for 1 till 21. And so on, increasing with 7 units. If you forget or you are lost in what you are doing there, again, start again. Again and again, again and again. I cannot tell you how many times I went with this practice of counting, or of visualizing a sphere in the middle of the forehead, in the space of consciousness here in front, this Chit Akasha. So take it again and again. This is not the ultimate, but is such an important preparation. Then also, last time we started to speak about the psychological flexibility and spiritual centeredness, how to diminish the swing between yes and no, between these two extremes in which we generally function. Why we study this now? Because self-awareness is prepared. We can create better conditions for becoming aware of ourselves. And there is a need of a framework. And this framework cannot blossom or cannot manifest, the self-awareness cannot be supported if we are identified with a limited perspective, with lacking openness, with being just in an extreme or another. So this limited idea of either yes or no, so going only in an attachment to a thing or another, which in the yogic tradition is expressed as a cause of suffering, raga, dvesha, like and dislike, attraction and repulsion. So this limitation, and then how can we go to the integrative yes and no, to go beyond this dualism? Because our mechanical part, and speaking about this, we are speaking about all these limiting structures of the mind and psychic, thoughts, emotions, feelings, can only work in these terms of yes or no. Or at least this is the way in which we were educated, either yes or no. And this brings a brutal division between like and dislike, yes and no, which is a kind of materialism of dualistic emotions. We don't like, we may say we are spiritual, we are not materialists, but this very dualism of like and dislike is like a materialism. It's like suffocating the whole vastness of consciousness. So it's a matter of lacking subtlety, spontaneity, intimacy, art, inspiration, grace, excitement of this center. Well, mind is always reactive, and it is agitated because it doesn't have a center, a place of repose. It doesn't know of such a place of repose. But coming to this pure I feeling simply means to come back with all our mind, psyche, personal universe to such a repose, to learn about this center again and again. So we will learn how, by coming consciously to a psychological balance, we can reveal and rest in this pure I feeling. Now, we need a little remembrance of the whole point. The language is often failing to describe the reality about this pure I feeling. In reality, we cannot say that we recognize the I feeling, because this I feeling is not an object of experience, it's not something that we can recognize, but is the very subject, is what we are. That's why there is a strong conditioning coming from our education, formation, and the way of speaking. So the language is simply reinforcing this scholastic taming prejudice that everything is about experiences. Everything is about looking for understanding something. For example, even now, it seems that the goal you are looking for is the understanding. You want to understand what I am saying. This seems the main purpose. Yes? But actually, this is not our main purpose now. Information can be so deceiving. The question is, who is the one who understands this? This is our main focus. That's why, while trying to understand about self-awareness, we can be lost. There is this possibility to be lost and forget about self-awareness. So again, it's not about understanding in a logical way, but about remembrance. This understanding, it's of a different kind. It's a remembrance of ourselves. So, who is the one in whom such thoughts, insights appear? This constant vigilance of the witness of all these. So, self-awareness refers ultimately to this kind of spiritual reflex, which hopefully becomes natural at a certain point through self-inquiry, a natural self-remembrance, a natural wonderment of being, me here now. What a miracle. Thus, practically, you discover that there is a first layer of yourself, this domain of personal, known part of yourself, who understands, have reactions to these ideas, to this topic, but then also, and this is essential, there is a silent taste of a deeper you. It is always there. That you is not the one who is peeling potatoes, is not the one who is eating, is not reading, is not laughing and crying and thinking. It is that silent you who is the stillness, awareness behind all these acts, and at the same time, the source of all of them, as presence, awareness, in which all these are happening. All these are happening in you. It's not something which maybe you heard already. It's not about knowing, but remembering. And this constant art of acknowledging this, to whom all these are happening. There should be a continuity between all these common acts of life and this silent, eternal taste of you. Otherwise, we experience a sense of alienation, confusion, disorientation, or there is something just purely mechanical in our life. We are acting as robots. We are sleeping because that ineffable is missing, is forgotten. And is forgotten. And we consider that this is normal, but it shouldn't be so. When you are that, you are freedom. There is a natural peace and love there, which means now, here, There are no frustrations, no anger, no concerns that you don't get it, that you don't understand, or the nervousness with the feeling that you are losing time or wasting your time, or you don't have time, because there you have all the time. You know, we sometimes get this advice, take your time. What this time of mind would mean? No? Stop and take your time. Take time to be in your heart. Stop, take time to be in your heart, and then you'll have all the time, the eternal now. So take your time to bring the attention there, to remember yourself, and then you have all the time. Immerse yourself in that eternity. And don't look for obvious. Don't try to grasp it. Just savor that very subtle nuance of eternity there. Then you realize that you have all the time in the world. And this is practical and experiential, not just a nice metaphor, nor just a philosophical idea. It's practical because it's about learning how to shift from the agitated condition of running out of time to timeless now, to the timeless now, tasting this timeless now. And again, it's not about understanding what I'm saying. Who is the one to whom all these are pointing? You learn easier about it when you really listen right now. Which means being fully present. When you talk, it can be more challenging, especially in the beginning, because talking gives less inner space, in a way. Shunryu Suzuki, a Zen master, said, to give your cow a large, spacious meadow is the way to control her. Your cow is your mind, and giving a large, spacious meadow, so contemplating this eternity, this present moment, is a way to control it. And there is also there a sense of being at home. There is a sense of sacredness, of fulfillment, of love, which are not coming from a circumstance, but from you being in touch with you. Non-phenomenal, nirvanic fulfillment. But as I said, this requires a constant attention or a practice of bringing the attention to that, to this self-awareness, not just in meditation. It requires a trust that this is bringing more peace, happiness, and resolves your problems much efficiently than when we believe only in thoughts and informations. So this trust I'm speaking about, and we can name it faith, is, a trust in the unknown, because indeed we don't really know that. It's that surrender that is happening there. But you trust, you start trusting, and the more you have the taste of it, the more you trust. And then practically, when you drive your car, you remember to be present. What else? Why to listen to the music in the car? Why to just do a lot of other things? Because this multitasking can be also a trap for self-awareness. Why to do all this? Just, it's such a beautiful opportunity to be present. That's why silence is so much recommended, because in silence there is more this space, this vast meadow for your cow. Or when you go for a walk, don't take your mobile. You put the mobile away and don't take it, because simply that is not just about taking a walk and being available for whoever is calling you, but being available for yourself. And then when you go to toilet, don't take your mobile or book to look for some new information, but learn to enjoy remaining with yourself. And in this way, you start believing more and more and deeply, and experience this staying there beyond sensations, thoughts, in the center, which is so nourishing. It can become so nourishing. So again, who am I? Who is listening now? Too much information generates mind agitation and is poison for our mind. We need to realize that. We don't need to stay with a phone and look at different things all the time. So just to conclude this, as a practice of self-awareness in any experience, thought, emotion, try to remember the subject, you. So again, now I'm speaking, you are trying to understand, but at the same time, this understanding is pointing to something else, not to a logical clarity, but to a spiritual clarity, to that stillness. And now it may be easier because we are speaking about this, because we let some space for it. But this is not a problem. It's enough to remember. No matter how quick you are in something, you can still point to that stillness. So after we clarified that constant remembrance, let's see how by coming consciously to this psychological balance, we can reveal and rest in this stillness I was speaking about, this pure I feeling I was referring. Again, in this integration of the extremes of this yes and no of our soul, there is not a flat denial or a flat affirmation that will help us, because in this we will miss all the many intermediate stages lying between the two violent extremes: only yes, only acceptance, or denial. All these inner octaves of finer meanings that we seek in order to become more conscious in our daily life will be ignored. But if you acknowledge them, you realize that all of them can become pointers to this self-remembrance. Because we are freed from just this dualistic mechanical thinking. In mechanical thinking, we are it's a materialism. We are very sure that we know. We are very sure that we know. But that wonderment, which is exactly that existing in between, or openness to a vast spectrum of possibilities, that is such a beautiful key. Often these finer meanings, finer solutions are just what our soul is longing for without realizing it. In the normal mechanical approach, we are actually not having the proper perspective for spiritual understanding. So that framework is missing. In just these extremes, yes and no, in just these extreme identifications with a point of view or another, this mindful, no, this lack of the beginner's mind, no, when you know it's like this or like that, when this wonderment is missing, we lack this framework. We are not in the proper conditions. This place of integration is a marvelous realm, which is similar with poetry, with the realm of parables. As Rumi said, somewhere beyond right and wrong, there is a garden. I will meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. So again, this is experiential. We look for that marvelous field, marvelous garden, beyond right and wrong. Otherwise, we lose so much time in the profane world, which is somehow a betrayal of the beauty of the essence that we are. We get suffocated by this ephemeral yes or no and forget this immutable center. While the real intuition is coming from this center, from this 0 point, from this stillness. The parables and many spiritual stories are designed for pointing to this paradoxical and paralogical thinking. For example, there is a story in the Zen tradition, the martial arts student who asks the master for the time of reaching perfection. And the master says, you may reach the perfection in 10 years. But what if I work really, really hard? The student asks. Then the master answers, the perfection may come in 15 years. So longer. Looking for shortcuts by pushing is sabotaging ourselves, because it's just amplifying an extreme, taking us from the pursuing of the center, which is the path. The path is a path of coming back to that center, to coming back to that neutrality and understanding what this neutrality is in all aspects of life. This middle path Buddha was speaking about, this hatha, the harmony between sun and moon in the yogic tradition. Or another paradox, only through long perseverant practice we can learn that there is nothing to be learned. It's paradoxical for the mind, but it's so true. This, there is nothing to be learned, is not valid in the beginning. It's only when we create these conditions of coming to that balance, of going in the center. Sometimes we need to push in a limit or to break through some limitations there. There is also a beautiful story, the story of judgment of Solomon, the wise king of Israel in the Bible. He had to decide between two women, both claiming to be the mother of a child. So he needs to simply make a choice. Here we say, well, it's just about this yes or no, to say yes to a woman and no to the other woman. But Solomon went to the very extreme of such tension between those women. He suggested to cut the baby. So he said, well, let's cut the baby in two, and each woman received a half. The non-mother was okay with such solution, while the actual mother begged that the child be given to the care of her opponent. So with this wise strategy, he was able to discern who was the fake mother and who was the real mother. But this sounds very much like this Taoist principle that extreme yang brings yin, extreme yin brings yang, a compensating force. Another paradox or secret of existence revealed by Nisargadatta Maharaj, which is very practical. It's a nice saying, but is so practical. He is telling us the secrets of a spiritual life. He says, you are always seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, always after happiness and peace. Don't you see that it is in your very search for happiness that makes you feel miserable? Try the other way. Indifferent to pain and pleasure, neither asking nor refusing, give all your attention to the level on which I am is timelessly present. Soon, you'll realize that peace and happiness are in your very nature, and it is only seeking them through some particular channels that disturb. Avoid this disturbance. That is all. So, detach from pain and pleasure, never asking nor refusing, give the attention to a different level, to the center. This comes to a similar, is mirrored in the West by a saying of George Bernard Shaw. He said, there are two tragedies in life. One is not to get your heart's desire. The other is to get it. We are looking to control, and the control we seek for preventing fear and suffering by bringing only pleasure in our life is based on this idea that we are being in which all these emotions are separate, and there are separate and opposite entities, like, dislike, there. But ultimately, again, they are existing in the same dual level as poles of the same relative game of either yes or no. The same Maya, illusion. Suffering and fear can only exist if we believe in pleasure and try to grasp it. They are antagonists, but they support each other. And this is the rule of Maya. Matri, Maya coming from ma, to measure, yes? Comparing this dualistic approach. And this beautiful paradox of separation and integration, of this play of existence, was expressed by Tozan, Zen master. He lived in the 9th century. He speaks about some fascinating stages in deepening in this consciousness of oneness. But he said in a poem, the blue mountain is the father of the white cloud. The white cloud is the son of the blue mountain. All day long, they depend on each other without being dependent on each other. So all day long, they depend on each other without being dependent on each other. The white cloud is always the white cloud. The blue mountain is always the blue mountain. Let's have a break for questions. So if there are any questions, please raise your hand, and let's have a session of question and answers now. So you can raise your electronic hand there, and then you will be allowed to speak by the team in French who is assisting me. There is question. When you are called selfish and get a message that this long and loaded, that is long and loaded with hard feelings, so message that is long and loaded with hard feelings, blame, pain, and judgments, how is the best way to respond? Perhaps I have the answer from our meetings in the past, though I would like to address the concerns directly. It is foolish to request a meeting when the judgment came from this request. Well, it's not about, you see, we focus on that perception, which the perception of somebody else, which indeed may be relative. But what is important is if that indeed can be in an objective way reflected in you. So do you recognize this? This is more important than anything. In total honesty, So try to create this transparency, because it's not, in the end, it's not about what one person or another is thinking. It's not about you trying to control what everybody is thinking about you, but to see if that is true. And if that is true, then of course, first you look on that, and we have the tools to operate with this, to face it, to embrace all that, and to make a commitment to change, while of course honestly and with humbleness apologize. And in general, I mean, the perception of some people, if there are there, you can then apologize, or you can explain and clarify. Definitely meeting that person would be good, but not with the need to defend yourself or to protect, but with an aspiration to know the truth. Maybe you ignored some aspects. Maybe you consider that this was okay, but it wasn't, and you discover that it wasn't, and so on. There is a beautiful Sufi story about this. It said that man went to his master and complained, you know, I have a neighbor who is bothering me so much all the time. He's taking my time because he is coming to my house and speaking and speaking and speaking, and I don't know, I feel bothered by this, but I don't know how to deal with this. Oh, the master said, I have a very good solution for this. Well, whenever he will come, next time he will come, and whenever he comes, ask him to borrow you money, to give you, to lend to you money, to give you money. And you'll see that after, soon after that, he will not come anymore. Well, the man said, yes, it's a good solution, but what if he will speak after that to all the people in the town, saying that I'm not having money and I'm begging for money from him, and so on. To this, the master answered, what are you actually wanting? You want to control the thoughts of others? You want to just appear in front of others in a way or another, or you want to resolve your problem? So if we are in this freedom, we don't stay in stories, and how people are perceiving. Beyond anything is to be honest with yourself and to see that if that is accurate, or to try to understand why that was reflected in that way in that person. And then, of course, to try to clarify and to apologize. It may be the case. Anyhow, you can do this. In humbleness, many things are resolving. I'm saying in humbleness, why? Because this humbleness is exactly this sense of centeredness. This is humbleness. Coming to that no extreme, no attachment to an idea about myself, how special I am, or poor me, or so on. Coming in humbleness, the I am. Yes. So there is another question. Samira? I hope you can speak. Yes, Samira.
I don't hear you.
What about now?
Yes, yes.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you. I just feel kind of burning because, sorry. um, on one side, I know that this is everything I want, and the recognition of it is here. And I appreciate it also more and more, and I'm experiencing it in the beauty of it. But it seems like sometimes when when there's a lot of disillusion in it, and just it is more natural and becomes beautiful, like powerful, expressed in life, it seems like that the mind comes somehow in and tries to distract me, or I see a kind of a tendency of control or trying to manage life and things like this. And this part, I feel it's not in my hands. I don't feel I can really, it's just, it feels like it's a process. I don't feel it's in my hand to really let go of this ego in that way. Sometimes by grace it's happening, and then it's just natural. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, it feels like there's some interest and it pulls me out. So I just feel even now when I was listening to you, and I'm having this since yesterday, there's less interest in sitting with myself. So I just felt to bring this to you now and to express that. And yeah.
Yes, Samira. So I wouldn't be bothered by this. I mean, it's natural. It's the part of the process. Of course, this is happening. It's a matter of perseverance. It's a matter of coming again and again, again and again. This is nothing new. This is something that happens to so many people. And yes, there is a need for this longing and this aspiration. And this aspiration is not an extreme, or it's a good extreme, because it's an aspiration to the center. It's not an extreme going just to, I don't know, desiring, sometimes I'm so obsessed by food, or I'm so obsessed by whatever, you know? And you learn to come to the center, and it's good to nourish this longing. And then slowly, this will come. It's a process. You need to understand this as well. So I wouldn't, I mean, it's like this. It's like this. It's like this.
It feels like it's good to hear this also, because maybe inside something is also a little bit perfectionist and impatient, and this part gets disturbed by this process, or by the mind coming or taking it even too serious, and then it's already trapped somehow.
Yes. It's a very, very nice story of Suzuki Roshi. It is said that a student filled with emotion and crying implored him, came to him and asked, why is there so much suffering? So asking, why is there so much suffering? And Suzuki Roshi simply replied, no reason.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. So we can go in many, explanations and the mind, but then it's no reason. It's just this embrace. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Remus?
Yes, Sahaja, are you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So, about the process, what I'm trying now, it's to get closer and closer by this silence. And it's quite difficult in the real time, in the real life, because I felt that there is another rhythm, like in meditation, for example. In meditation, let's see, it's some easy to get closer by this silence, but in the real life, it's difficult. And I try to practice this exercise that you talk about last
Which one?
week.
Which one?
About to be aware about that three phases, to be aware about when I'm passing through the door threshold. And yes, it's fascinating me. And I took a tapas for 40 days about to be aware 10 moments in approximately minimum 3 minutes to be aware each day to wake up the consciousness. This is my tapas, but I'm trying to understand now in correlation with what I said. I try to understand how this process helps me to get closer by the silence, to get how this process, for example, this exercise, how this exercise helped me to go farther.
So, as I said, an important element is that we forget to remember
Yes.
to remember about ourselves. Yes. So such moments of mindfulness are just preparation for this taste of presence. So whenever you enter the door or the threshold, a new space, you can ask the question, who am I? Or this I am, whatever resonates. The point is to bring that meaning, And you'll see that in the beginning, it appears like a tapas. So I'm somehow smiling because here is not about a 3-minute tapas or 40 days tapas. It's like a life commitment to the truth. So it's not that, I make a tapas to think about God for 40 days and then what? Or to be awake for 30 days or 40 days and then I'm going to forget. But it's rather a constant preoccupation. And for example, when I'm speaking to you now, you are just listening and staying in that, who is the listener? Who is the one? Me here now. And again and again. And this remembrance, it's exactly as in meditation, that most subtle nuance. It's not, what I'm speaking about. It's not that you have a big state of samadhi now, but still a nuance of it. And I'm going to speak about this now later. A nuance of it, a very subtle taste of it can be perceived even now. When we say present moment, be aware of the present moment.
Yes, indeed.
It might not be the deepest state which we have in meditation, but still that echoes. And this should be done when you pass through a threshold.
Okay.
Or when you take a breath.
Okay.
So I take the breath and somehow I dissolve. In that moment, I forget about myself, about my ego, my story. I forget about myself. I surrender.
Okay.
So it's a matter, as I said, it's an art of learning this. It requires perseverance and mindfulness in this. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll practice more.
Yes. So
this suffering and happiness being together. Suffering can only exist if we believe in pleasure. But at the level of the center of the heart, all this duality vanishes like a dream. No karma, no action, no reaction, just a flow without somebody, an ego, to react. Only the witness. Only the presence. That's why Nisargadatta Maharaj said, detach from like and dislike. Look for that level in which the I am, this center, is always present. Not just for 3 minutes in your day, not for 40 days, but try to make this your lifestyle, your way of being. Yes? So, how to bring all these personal emotions, like, dislike, to the center? Well, I will just mention a little bit of what Buddha said about this, what he named the law of dependent origination. He speaks about 12 links to the chain of existence. We will not elaborate this because it's not the purpose of this, but it's interesting to understand what is the nature of this like and dislike. He speaks about 12 causes and of suffering, or of this wheel of constant samsara, existence in limitation. And the first one is ignorance. And then, conditioned by contact, you have the contact with of the senses with the external world, arise feelings like the quality of pleasantness or unpleasantness. So you like something or you dislike. Then, because of feeling, so we refer just to this, it's you like and dislike. Because of this arises craving, which is like a thirst for that thing, a yearning for that thing. And because of craving, we go into clinging or grasping. We just attach to that. It's a rigidity of the mind routines there in that grasping, yes, which can be something pleasant and you attach to that, or it can be something unpleasant and you reject, but is somehow also an attachment to a habit there. And because of this grasping, again, we get involved in the karmic formations and the constant wheel of samsara, Buddha explains. And this is totally true for the way in which our normal life is going. So this grasping. And this grasping in itself is the swing between all this pleasant and unpleasant. Nevertheless, the like and dislike in themselves are not a cause of limitation. For example, in Tantra, the feeling is not denied. It's just liberated from the rest of this chain of dependent origination. So we can stay in liking and disliking without clinging, without craving after that, yes? So the problem is not the liking. I mean, the liking, yes, it's a part of that, but we may come to this idea, well, how can I live my life without having like and dislike in things? Well, Tantra is saying like and dislike are still okay. But that grasping that is generated is there, the problem. Because liking and disliking as relative terms of this phenomenal world are part of samsara, while, for example, love is of a different level, of this freedom of being, of this center. In the stillness of our being, love is anytime available. So when we go to that, who am I? You will see, in that present moment, in that centeredness, you will see that love is there. So we don't go into this because there is this confusion. Some people say, well, extremes are everywhere. So love versus hate. So then how should I deal with this? Yes, we can say that at the logical mind, we can speak about a conceptual difference between love and hate, but love is of the center. Love is beyond phenomenal. I will try to explain even more. We can appreciate life in a different kind of like, which doesn't necessarily generate craving and grasping. In a couple relationship, we try to create this detachment. And also, people may use these terms, like and love, in phrases with similar meanings. We may say, I like or I love this piece of art, or this music, or I like or I love chocolate, or I don't like beans, and so on. Still, in reality, is a big difference, because like is conjunctural. Like in this chain of being has an opposite and usually depends on the personal constellation. But love is when the presence, the center, is accessed, and there is completely unifying. It's not opposed to something like hate and so. Love is that reality in which like and dislike, hate and attraction are all embraced. That is the real love. That is the love of the center. That is a non-phenomenal love. I mean, a love that is of nirvana, the love that is of ourselves as center. While like and dislike are these extremes of the swing. Yes. The same is with truth or beauty, stillness. They are not of the personal domain of such pairs of opposites. That's why Rumi said, love is the only constant in the universe. So it is worth to remember and to charge ourselves with this. Love is the only constant in the universe. I'm coming into that center. I realize that love is the only constant in the universe. Sadness, for example, unless faked, cannot come anytime. So you sometimes may be sad, sometimes not. It depends on circumstances and so on. But love, yes. Love can come anytime because it is not depending on this personal configuration. It is not of the personality domain, but of that eternal now. And in that eternal now, love, beauty flow with no opposite. Because this domain, this is the very nature of this domain of the center. So when we really become self-aware, again, who am I? We cannot say love is not available now, or I'm not in mood for love. this relativity and ephemerality can be true for personal feelings, but not for pure love or any impersonal attributes like truth and stillness and bliss. Pure love is not just a feeling. Therefore, you don't have any excuses not to love. Just be self-aware. Just come to that center. Now, at the extremes of this swing, of this oscillation of the swing, we have the negativity or the over-enthusiasm, which can obscure our decisions so strongly. Just think about the solutions you make to problems when you are very pessimistic. There is nothing very smart or profound about this, yes? Or again, when we are violently excited by something, but in a kind of naive way. In both cases, we try to solve things through one of or the other of the opposites, by being in a mood, in an extreme mood, by lacking this centeredness of being. No? Going through the no or through the yes in accordance with how the swing shifts from one side to another. And you realize that such solutions are lacking value and actually are not solutions at all. And they bring a lot of suffering, this, we may say, violent decisions. No, we are suffering actually, and we are saying, why is so much suffering in my life and so on, is because we come to this kind of violent solutions, which are not necessarily violent in the sense that they are happening in an aggressive way, but they are happening in an extreme of this either no or yes. That's why the moods, emotions somehow tortures us with their ups and downs, because when we identify with them, we get in total identity with that, and we lack the center. We lack this presence. These moods we identify with, we can say, tempt us to make ridiculous, brutal suppositions, assumptions, conclusions, choices that later on in our life feel incongruent with our way of thinking, or we cannot keep them because otherwise we only mistreat or hurt or abuse ourselves. We feel sorry. I did this, but I'm so sorry. Or I took that decision and I'm so regretting that. Why? I don't know. Or this is how I felt that time, at that time. So when the swing of our emotions, thoughts, is closer to the middle point, so is closer to this pure I feeling, to this quietness of being, we can find more naturally the solution. This is why this naturalness, or sahaja, which means samsara and nirvana together, sahaja, born together, samsara and nirvana, the phenomenal word, this word, and that stillness together. This is the center. Otherwise, we are only in samsara because the decision is far from the witness, from that taste of infinity that we are, from that self-remembrance. But now the dualistic mind tends to separate it, is either samsara or nirvana, ignoring that they can be present in different combinations, proportions, since everything is the same oneness, even now. We cannot say that the sky is either totally blue or totally cloudy. Yes? So there are many degrees. The same is true for our soul. The same is true for our awareness. That's why we can have this dualistic logic saying a human being is either awakened or asleep. But still, in this so-called sleep, we can be more or less lucid. We can be closer to awakening. And there are also those magic moments of transition we were speaking about, so important moments when you come to waking up and then you try to keep yourself with no thoughts, again, with no extremes in that centeredness. So there is we can say, and this is good to clarify as well, there is a phenomenal relative center. It's a center between two polar energies, the neutrality of these polar energies between yin and yang. And even in Taoism, this center is named Wu-Ji, which means Wu, without, and Ji, extreme. Wu-Ji is without extreme, is exactly the center. It's not an extreme of yin or yang, you know, the extremes of the swing. And Wu-Ji means the infinite, the limitless. So in that which is without extreme, in that very point, you know, in that diagram of yin and yang, Wu-Ji is the center, the very center of that circle. And Wu-Ji is also the frame in which all this duality is the source of all this duality in Taoism. So once again, there is this relative center, a balance between yin and yang, which is still happening in samsara. It's still me trying to come to a balance, inhalation, exhalation, the pause, no? But this will lead further to the absolute center, to nirvana. So once again, dualistic, in the dualistic world, in the world of phenomena, still we can look for a balance. And this balance is a relative equilibrium, yes, between yin and yang, between plus and minus. It's not in itself, that balance is not in itself the transcendental reality. It's a relative balance. But that relative balance is preparing us to that absolute balance, or to that absolute center, which is the spirit. So, in conclusion, we can say we cannot rely on thoughts, on positive thinking, but rather on mental void, on peace, to be the proper conditions from freeing ourselves from just samsara. And I'm saying just samsara because anyhow, it's not about denying the phenomenal world, but just samsara means forgetting, who am I? There is a beautiful story of Christian Orthodox English theologian, Callistus Ware. He said that while he was traveling in a train, he was just staying there in prayer, and a man in front of him, you know, simply looking at him, and he's you know, looking as a monk, he asked him, "Are you awake? Are you awake?" And then he just said, he just thought, well, if I say yes, this would be just an expression of pride. And it may not even be true, since there are so many moments in which I am not totally conscious and I am not totally present. But if I say no, it's also not true, because it's not honoring all this grace that is happening in my heart, all this joy that is there, and all that sense of presence that is happening so often. And he came with this answer. So the question was, are you awake? And he came with the answer, I am awakening. I am awakening. It's a very beautiful way of expressing this integration, this process in which we are not just in the rigidity or either this or that. I am awakening is in the spirit of a book, God is a Verb. God is a Verb is a book of Jewish rabbi, David Cooper, a very beautiful book, a very inspiring and beautiful book. He himself, if I'm not wrong, he was a very good friend with a yogi and a Buddhist teacher, and they together created a center. So that sense of integration. And in this book, God is a Verb, expresses this dynamic, this dynamic balance, not a static, inert reality, transcendental reality. And he even says that in the Bible, we used to translate the Old Testament speaking about God. All the time there is the name God. But he said in Hebrew, there are different names. There are countless names related to different nuances, different aspects, to this dynamic of the soul in contact with and in longing for that divine reality. Keeping the dualistic logic, we would wait only for obvious ecstatic experiences, considering that they are the only possible sign of being spiritual, or only having deep contemplative states. While I'm not saying that meditation shouldn't be done, because yes, that depth is also so much needed, because it's so much nourishing, is so much giving that sense of depth. But while this is true, still in our daily life, we can express all these nuances and a taste of oneness, a vague remembrance of the center. And this is happening. It's just a matter of recognizing them. And this can save us in difficult moments, bringing an unexpected serenity or faith or wisdom, coming in a very discreet way. As Rumi said, only the gentle breeze knows the secret of union. Listen. As it whispers a song to every heart. Like this. Our life flows. There is diversity, polarity, extremes. But the freedom in it comes from the center and can be felt there. The movements of the swing are happening somehow on the horizontal dimensions of many parallel planes, the physic, the psychic, the mental, emotions, and so on, while the center is like a vertical axis, the nirvana, the present moment that passes through all these domains, mental, physical, psychic, whatever, in all of this. And because of this axis, they are also communicating in between them. It's not a separation, as we experience so well in Hatha Yoga. And because of this middle path in all, they are not really just parallel plans, but it's a sense of interacting. It's a sense of a network, as Tantra suggests. Yes, the very word Tantra, which means network. And then it is this saying, tomorrow never comes. Tomorrow never comes. Tomorrow never comes. And still we live so much in past and future, in the imagination, swinging, again, a swing from past to future, forgetting about this now, not as grasping what is happening now, but as that depth. So when the swing has swung in its full extent in one direction and then in the other, we are somehow lost. We forgot the center of life. We forget our center. We cannot be self-aware because self-awareness is this centeredness. But how this conscious restriction of the back and forth movement of the swing can be done? It can be very easily understood in the language of yes and no. So not either yes or no, but yes and no. The presence of yes and no reveals itself as a center beyond the extremes of either yes or no. And it's exactly this recollection we were speaking some satsangs before, the recollection, exactly as Saint Teresa of Avila was speaking about, all the energies are gathered in the soul. That gathering is not just about some nice energies, or everything is brought, both yes and no, both extremes. Yes. So what happens when we are just following, we follow blindly just our thoughts, emotions, and reactions. We have this extreme of being entirely unconscious of our reactions, which is what defines this condition of being totally asleep to the real life, which is characterized by an absolute lack of power of self-observation. So you don't even observe yourself, what is happening with my thoughts, emotions. We are just taken by them. No matter how active a person may be in such a condition, is actually totally passive because is unconscious for the inner world of thoughts and emotions. He's just taken by them, but is not aware of them, which means saying unconsciously yes to all moods and thoughts. Saying blindly no to a situation that creates dislike and disgust means, in a way, actually saying also yes to our routine of reacting. So being always in such situations of dislike. Or, so basically it's like a blind acceptance of everything that comes from our mind, from our moods. This is what I also experience sometimes in meditation when people are saying, well, I perceive this, I have that, and I cannot focus because I have that thought or that image appears. And I said, who cares about all this? You are a conscious human being. Come to the heart. ignore a thought or another, or a perception or an activation of a chakra, because now it's about this centeredness. You as a conscious human being, you come to that. You don't go blindly just to an emotion or another. And then it's like a revelation. We realize, well, oh, I used to identify totally with my emotions. Or we can also equally say a strong unconscious no to the inner drives when the thing inside brings a lot of suffering. So we suppress. We tend to suppress. And that suppression is a no, but also a blind no there. A small example. Somebody just told me, please don't speak about any more of my dear dog that died, because this make me feels like crying. So this is such a common statement, yes? We don't want to hear about somebody who was really dear to us, who died, or a sad thing, because it's that sadness. We avoid an emotion, that sadness. But in reality, again, we said we come with this label of sadness, but it is much more than that concept, that label, sadness, and what this label expresses. Therefore, we say a strong no to such memories and emotions, and we tend to suppress them. While mixed in the same sadness, it is actually so much love and gratitude and friendship for that dog, for example. It is painful, but at the same time, it is so true, so awakening. So I wouldn't run from such an emotion or suppress it, because it is so precious in this fire of awareness. It is me. Freed from like, dislike, painful or not, that remembrance dissolves, like the fish dissolves. It was that dog, now it's not. But what remains is just that recollection, that presence, a tremor there. I'm not fighting with anything. It's just an embrace and an acceptance. I come again to that center, and thus I release any tendency to suppress things. And I'm really alive because such an intense emotion, because this love, because this sacred tremor of the heart. I just need to release it from the grasping, from the personal identification with that emotion, with that like and dislike and regret and sorry and so on. As Rumi said, to be a Sufi is to feel joy in the heart when sorrow appears. This means to find and come to the center, finding and coming to the center when such an extreme appears. And then you are a Sufi or a yogi or whatever, you are awakening. When we are simply reacting by total blind acceptance or total suppression, total yes or total no to our emotions and thoughts, moods, or the whole ego arsenal, there is no real aspiration to observe what it is happening deeper inside and relate to the heart, to the center of that swing, which is the very expression of self-awareness. People often are speaking about this spiritual bypassing, just running into idealistic ideas and these transcendental spiritual ideas. I do agree that this is possible. We can just run away and avoid some life situations, just imagining a spiritual journey. But the self-inquiry and the self-awareness refers to going exactly to that very core of no matter what situation, and to find that center, to find that very core, to discover that very core of yourself and of the whole world. And then there is not anymore a spiritual bypassing. There is a very beautiful book of an American psychologist. I will not mention the name because I don't want to somehow criticize, because the whole book is very inspiring. But somehow he's a psychologist and he is a Buddhist, and observe that, yes, indeed, there are people who are practicing Buddhist meditation, but then they don't manage in their daily life to deal with different situations. And somehow meditation comes a way of running and escapism from that. And actually, this happened with his life, with his wife, and he had the story with his wife and a divorce, and he couldn't actually manage. And he realized that, oh, meditation would be just running away. And he came with this idea of a spiritual bypassing, which many people are doing. Yes, it is true. But again, this doesn't mean that Buddha didn't have a solution for dealing with problems in marriage. Buddha offered the solution of everything, to get rid of suffering, except from my relationship with my wife. It's not so. So it's simply showing that that person didn't get it, didn't realize the real efficiency of this spiritual journey, what means to come to that emptiness, or to come to that Buddha mind, or that pure consciousness, because that would definitely bring that balance and that harmony and integration even in that daily life. So it happens that people may criticize and they say, no, this here, we are doing meditation, but this actually doesn't apply to my life situation. It's just because they didn't yet realize that you can go even deeper. It's just because meditation didn't shake all the inner structures, the subconscious structures, to bring that light in which also the personal problem can be embraced. So going just identified with thoughts and stories is like acting precisely like a robot, with very rigid routines, and run constantly again and again. I'm either in yes, either in no, identify with that, not understanding. And with some people, those around them are sometimes making jokes without the person realizing this, because he is totally serious in that running of the program. Or they may even sarcastically play and trigger them with some topics, so that all that follows is just a predictable storm of emotions. Because they are so repetitive, reminding them about the ex-husband, she will get crazy, or she will start crying. And then people may say, let's go and make a fun to do this and so on, which of course is not nice and not wise, but expresses this kind of being like a puppet, which is just pulled by different strings. If I press this button, you'll act in this way. If I press this button, you'll act in that different way. This is not what a self-aware human being should be. And while, yes, some things may trigger in us a lot of sadness or pain or emotion. Who am I? Coming into that centeredness. No? People, otherwise, no, if you start gossiping about something, you know that person will be caught. You know that if it's about somebody that person doesn't like, he will just get in that and be full of anger and will be so the extreme going in that no or yes, you know, of the swing there, just like the puppet pulled by strings in these ups and downs. And this is all that we know. Or another very actual and sensitive example I can give you. What will happen now if we will speak about vaccination and all these extreme ideas about, you know, vaccination. I also don't agree with, of course, with compulsive obligation of vaccination. It is so much common sense to let people to choose, but I don't need to go in big fears. Because why? Because I trust humanity, and above this, I trust God. I trust the center. Which means I don't desperately or obsessively fear that this is a real option happening or happening soon to humanity, but rather ridiculous extreme ideas in both directions. Everybody should get vaccinated, or no, it's they want to do this and we will be forced to do this. Of course, the media and some people want dramas, scandal, extremes, because this is how the news are functioning. You know, the media is functioning. It's read it because you go in those extremes. But this is just more agitation for the mind. It's not healthy for that centeredness. So the media is speculating all this kind of big and making big stories and dramas, because this is the life. It's the drama of them. This is how they live. But this is the story of the ego. This is how the ego lives. You need to look for the center. It's not productive. It's not healthy for self-awareness, for being, to just be lost in an identification with another. And then it's not that I am ignoring or denying such a topic or repressing. We can also have a very clear opinion about it. And this can make me act very precisely and lucidly when this is really needed. And I have a direct experience with communists, so I know that weird things can happen to people, but reacting emotionally is not wise. It's not leading to the center. And again, this doesn't mean that acting fiery or having strong thoughts and actions is something wrong, or they can be there, but they are not anymore based on random emotions we are identified with. We are clinging and craving and clinging on them, or moods or programs, computer programs. They would radiate from the same loving heart, from the center. It can be very fiery, but from this sense of truth, from this trust. Think about Jesus Christ blaming and punishing the sellers in front of the temple. It's a story like this in the Gospels. It was definitely not an emotional outbreak there, even though it may appear like this for those who don't know about this another higher possibility. How was there? What if not just getting crazy. Well, it is possible to be fiery and still not being lost in that. Yes. So acting from a different place. And we can say on the contrary that all the acts of Jesus Christ can be understood as archetypal teachings, which reverberate a deeper meaning than the act itself. Because that being one with the Father, me and the Father are one, is simply meaning I am one with the center. If there are any other questions, before concluding. It's a question from Diana. How about when someone does something that affects our lives and the lives of other people we care about, and it's in our power to do something to stop that person from continuing to do harm? We don't have to concentrate on liking or disliking, but I suppose we still have to do something to stop bad things from happening. I just answered giving that example of Jesus. So definitely you can act, but from that centeredness. It's not about acting or not acting, but it's about acting from center or from an extreme. Otherwise, we are accumulating karma from non-reacting when we have the power to do so in a positive way, of course. Yes, I agree. But the karma in itself means action and reaction. It's a karma as long as there is a personal involvement, as long as we are in those extremes. But there is no karma when it's acting from that core of your being, which is the very spirit of karma yoga, yoga of acting in that equanimity, in that centeredness, in that detachment from the extremes of like and dislike and so on. Because like and dislike means that when we are going in that chain, means attachments and grasping and clinging, usually. Otherwise, indeed, you can live in like and dislike, but freed from that. It's just a neutral like and dislike. And same thing can happen when we have the chance to do something good and we do not react. When we avoid positive opportunities we encounter in life. I totally agree. It's correct what you say. So staying in the center doesn't mean to be passive or inefficient. It's actually a high degree of efficiency when we are acting from that center, and then we can act or not, but it's not because our mind is pushing us to act or not, or just our personality, but from that heart, from that present moment. If I am unable, another question from Swan Andrews, if I am unable to act from a place of centeredness or be sure I am acting from there, shall I still act? I will rather recommend to come to that. Of course, saving your child or doing an act which requires, a spontaneous reaction. Of course, this can happen in no matter what situation. So there are some things that require a spontaneous act, which is going beyond, a rational or logical thinking. But when we are generally speaking about plans in life and so on, go to that place of purity of intention. Go to that place of centeredness. Try to look for that place of truth. You know your truth. Maybe it's not the absolute truth, but you know how your truth is. And come like you would come to the temple, the temple of your heart, in front of your heart, in that sincerity of your being. Come there. And this means trying to drop all this like and dislike, trying to honor that simplicity of being. No? Because I may prefer something, and then I'm acting because I prefer to do that thing, or I want to create some advantages to myself or to others. This is not fair. This is not spiritually okay, because it creates karma. So again, saying I am unable to act from a place of centeredness is quite a dualistic approach. Try to come closer. Try to, you cannot know the place, but you know your purity of intention. You know a sense, you can have and express a sense of honesty and humbleness. Come to that, come to that. It may not be perfect, still is better, still is better. And you learn, in all this you learn. Yes? I don't see other questions. Then I will just conclude with just wanting to share. I prepared actually two short quotes from yoga. One from Yoga Vasishta, which is a text Ramana Maharshi loved a lot. Yoga Vasishta is the teachings of a great sage, Vasishta. And also from Viveka Chudamani of Shankaracharya. I will still just end next time more. But today, from Yoga Vasishta in chapter 8, Vasishta, this sage, speaks about the character of the liberated living being, or Jivatma. Jivatma is a realized soul. And here we can see exactly this expression of a centeredness. He is always at peace and undisturbed under all circumstances, freed from the restrictions of caste, creed, custom, and scriptures. He comes out of the net of the world as a lion from a cage. He rests unagitated in the supreme bliss. He is ever happy, never hanging in joy on anything else. He remains firm and calm like a mountain. He has nothing to do with supernormal powers, enjoyments, influence, or honor. He does not care for life or death. And now is the most beautiful passage, I wanted to share. In the company of devotees, he is like a devotee. He plays a child in the company of children. He is a youth among young. He acts as an old man in the company of aged ones. He is full of courage in the company of courageous people and shares the misery of the miserable ones. So this expresses this flexibility, this capacity of not going in extremes, and this humbleness of being and identifying with different conditions out of that compassion and out of this freedom. You don't have a strong yes or a strong no with which you identify. You are playing like a child with children. You are like an old man with old people, and so on. So now let's for a moment see each other and enjoy the presence of each other. Maybe the team in France is helping us. And also to have the video on. In this joy of seeing each other, who am I?
But I don't know if we can see
Let's conclude feeling that gentle breeze that knows the secret of union, that unites all of us as the heart, as the center. We bring the awareness in the heart, the feeling of gratitude, of being. With this openness, fullness of the heart, we gently open the eyes. Me here now. What a miracle.